Welcome to another episode of the CPGGUYS podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third part in our series on profitability here on the CPGGUYS podcast. I am Peter V.S. Bond. I'm also the VP of Retail Strategy at Power Reviews. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sri. Sri, welcome.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to tackle your favorite topic, Sri, and that's media.
Showmanship, my friend.
It is.
He's the one with the hat.
What can I say? In any event, let's kick this off with some basics, Sri. Why don't we talk about the types of e-commerce and media that are available?
Yeah, so that's a great place to actually start, Peter, because media is not homogeneous.
No.
Depending on how you execute it, where you execute it more than the how, you should not treat media as the same and unique vehicle across the board.
Yeah.
For example, if you in the former life, if you executed media on TV, it's not the same as executing media on print. The reach is different, the types of cohorts and
radio
are different.
For that matter.
Radio is radically different. And it also tends to be an on-the-move occasion which you think of for a different set of audiences. So I'm going to say e-commerce media is not radically different. So let's talk about all the various types of e-commerce and how media could potentially fit before we get into the econometric model.
Okay.
So let's talk about the most common one first, which is the pure play partnership. This is going to be your Amazon.com 1P business, your Walmart.com 1P business, which will tend to be omni-channel, Target.com, Walgreens.com, could be ShopRite.com, just depending on who your
the retailer's buying from you typically in pallet quantities. You're shipping into the warehouse.
Absolutely.
They're responsible at the end of the day for pricing. They're responsible for fulfillment. It's all on them.
All of it.
Yeah.
So your ownership of media is on someone else's platform.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I break it up only into two pieces, which is if it's really to drive awareness and grow brand equity, it is a media activity, a pure media below the line activity. If it's a very targeted seasonal event-based price promotional activity, it is a trade activity, and that's as easy as it gets. Let's go to the second one, and this has various forms to it, which is the famous word, direct to consumer.
D2C.
Does it still send us a chill up your spine?
I get goosebumps.
So do I.
Yeah.
And the reason we get goosebumps, folks, is not enough brands are really doing enough with D2C.
Yeah.
So there could be three different models of D2C. Number one is you could have full ownership of D2C. You own the website, you're hosting it, your IT is doing a good job of hosting it. You are your own agency, or you're working with an agency that's in-house that comes in and runs all the marketing campaigns for you. You do your own content, end-to-end. Supply chain is whole. You own the ecosystem. In this sort of model, 100% of the time, irrespective of whether it's offers, promotional activity, you're going to find it's the marketing brand team that owns the website. AK owns D2C. So 100% of the time, it's a below the line media activity. Of course, for the promotional activity, they will coordinate with sales, but since they own the website end to end, there's no debate in my head, this is a marketing activity. Then let's jump to the next one. D2C with partial ownership.
So what is partial ownership?
Partial ownership is when you own the marketing engine and you run the activity for brand equity development, but you've outsourced supply chain.
The fulfillment.
The fulfillment of this.
Yeah.
And this could also be a ecosystem where you've used a third-party partner to do the fulfillment, or you're hosting it on the third-party marketplace of Amazon. That's why you're doing your D2C. I call that really the 3P marketplace. So this is really you own the website, you own the marketing, and you've really outsourced fulfillment.
Are there any indicators of a type of CPG, the characteristics that would lend itself to direct full ownership versus partial?
Absolutely.
Is DSD probably more equipped to handle full ownership than
that
others?
Is exactly it, Peter. If you're in the DSD business or in the high price point item, you're better equipped to handle,
because they're doing eaches in many cases.
Absolutely. Or if you're doing split or inventory and order management for retailers with who have much smaller orders, and you're mixing SKUs, you have the skill set and you're picking base. So in that model, which is a partial ownership, you're still holding on to marketing, and odds are it's the marketing team that owns the website.
Okay.
So media would go below the line.
Got it.
From an econometric perspective. The next one is where D2C is fully outsourced. You picked a partner, they're running your marketing campaign, they're running your website, they're running your supply chain. That model to me is the same as selling product to a 1P partner.
Okay.
And you're kind of backing into D2C, but it's really you're treating them as a customer. So the same rules as the first one apply, which is the 1P rules. If it's promotions, it's trade. If it's equity and awareness, innovation launches, it's media.
Seems to me like if you're a very big brand that is selling a lot of product, you're 1P, or you're a niche brand that isn't selling that much, you're doing it through a fully outsourced solution.
Yeah.
That's
So
kind of the two ends of the extremes.
Absolutely. You treat it like a 1P customer.
Yeah.
Now let's jump to the 3P marketplace.
Okay.
Similarly, 3 different forms. The
Yeah.
first one in a 3P marketplace is where you have full ownership.
Yeah.
So you own, and I'm going to use Amazon for this example for simplicity, but it could be eBay, it could be Walmart. There are other 3P marketplaces.
Target Plus, whatever.
Plenty of them exist
Yeah,
these
sure.
days. Albertsons has one.
Yep.
So this is where on Amazon, you own the seller central account yourself.
Yep.
So the brand owns it. The brand is responsible for the product listing, the ASINs,
The
SKU
pricing.
page, the pricing, the PDP,
Everything.
brand awareness, things of that nature.
Yep.
And so because the brand owns it, odds are you're in close partnership with the sales team who owns the number.
Yeah.
So if it's media driving search results, if it's media driving awareness, we're back to below the line. But if it's purely a promotional activity, such as a banner ad for the holiday season, for Black Friday,
Yeah.
that's trade.
That's above the line.
That's above the line.
Okay.
Trade.
Okay.
And so let's jump to the next one, which is third-party marketplace with partial ownership. So the only real thing you've outsourced in this ecosystem is you still hold on to equity building, you own the sale, fulfillment is gone to a third party because you don't want to be in the business of fulfillment. And earlier we've just discussed when it's appropriate to do fulfillment yourself and when it's not. And this model exists for
So all
those-
these models really have to do with how your organization is already built to operate.
More, I would say
And-
99% of the time that's going to be the
Okay.
criteria.
Yeah.
Because breaking that model in D2C changes the P&L
It's
radically.
it's a lot easier for, say, a DSD company to decide to move to partial ownership than it is for a company that doesn't have that skill to say,
You got it, Peter.
I want to have full ownership because now I have to deal with the whole deconstructing
You got
my
it.
standard delivery mechanism of case packer pallet quantity.
Yeah, why I qualify all of this with supply chain is because supply chain is a big element in D2C,
Sure.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
And most large brands, their supply chain is seen as a service engine.
Got it.
And what is the number one metric a chief supply chain officer is held to every year as part of the AOP? It's actually giving a check back to the CEO.
Yeah, they
Or
want to say how much money I
productivity.
saved, how
Exactly.
productivity have I delivered
Yeah.
to the organization.
You got it, Peter.
Because I was able to get the product to where it needed to go, and I was able to do it more efficiently than I did
Yeah,
in the
so
past.
my humble advice I always give
Yeah.
those who in the business of D2C who want to start it up, the digital natives is don't break the backbone of your supply chain and expect all of a sudden to drop $10 million in CapEx building big base for each. That's a bad idea. So outsource your fulfillment. So in that model, if you're just outsourcing fulfillment, we're back to square one.
Okay.
Which is when it's a promotional activity above the line, everything else including search below the line.
Yep.
And then you have the fully outsourced model for third-party marketplace, like people establish partnerships with pharma packs
Yes,
is a great example, and there are many of these.
or deliver. is
Deliver,
another
there's so many.
interesting
Quiver, this
example,
item just goes on and on. CPG.io, Pattern, where you're treating them like customers.
Yeah.
So it's the same model as 1P. Don't treat them radically different from 1P.
How do we advise our listeners to find all of these types of companies that can help
Yes.
them in these different stages? Because that's
Yes.
going to be really important.
Yes. So finding a partner in the D2C journey, especially from your number one quest that you probably want to go on to really answer well is finding a partner who can do fulfillment.
Yeah,
And how do you find the answer to somebody who's great at fulfilling?
yeah,
Listen to podcasts.
yeah. That'll do it.
Be intellectually curious.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna name
Use Google.
Yeah, Google, and I'm gonna name 5 or 6 right now.
Yeah.
Check them all out. By no means are Peter and I
We're not endorsing
one
them.
versus, yeah. As you said, Peter, not one over the other, but investigate them. So pharma
We're
packs.
we're enthusiasts of,
Yeah.
of these, but we're not endorsing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pharma packs.
Yep. Great one.
CPG.io. You talked about.
Check out the
Deliver.
episode with Aisha Khan. Awesome episode.
Yeah.
She's the Chief Strategy Officer at PharmaPax. Great.
And that
listen.
was in the month of July.
Yeah.
So do go back and hear that one. But these
But
are
I
the common ones.
think it was episode 18, roughly.
Episode 18.
Yeah.
So go back
Yeah.
and hear episode 18,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of answers in that.
Yeah.
And so jump to the last type of DDC model, which is not really D2C, it's B2B.
Okay.
But it's sometimes masked as D2C.
Yeah, talk about B2B because that's a very different kind of an
Yes.
animal.
And that's the whole reason I want to point that out.
Sure.
Because it is a different ecosystem.
I hear a lot from alcohol companies that because of alcohol, for those of you who don't know, we'll have this in a future episode because we have someone from Constellation coming on. But alcohol has extra legal restrictions because of its class trade, much more so than food and beverage. And it requires the separation of the manufacturer, the distributor, and the retailer. So by necessity, there must be a distributor in the mechanism. So what you'll hear a lot of alcohol manufacturers talk about is the fact that they have a B2B, how they communicate with the distributors, and the distributors in turn have a B2B model with the retailers. So you see a lot of these alcohol distributors starting to create B2B places where they're selling to independent alcohol retailers.
So B2B,
Yep.
right? This is the business most likely of case packs, because you're selling from a business to a business.
Yep.
They're going to order bulk of some capacity. Bulk is not necessarily just case packs, could be mixed inventory, but in either case, they're acquiring it for reselling. Because of that, who you're selling to is going to look very different from selling to a consumer.
You're selling to an institutional buyer, not an end user.
And because 70-80% of the time, they're going to really be looking for a product to buy, not to get inspired and browse and things of that nature, which will happen 20% of the time.
And that has impact, obviously, on the content that is made available to them.
Completely different from the
Yeah.
traditional Amazon PDP or Walmart PDP.
You're not
So,
trying to create some visual experience.
Not really.
It's functional information.
Scientific, functional information,
Yeah.
ingredients,
Yeah.
things of that nature. For that reason, Peter,
Okay.
80% of the time, this is going to be above the line trade because you're trying to close a sale.
And the media that you use to drive that is wholly different.
Completely
Than
different set of
B2C.
journals, absolutely,
Yep.
100%. You're at trade shows, so it's going to be mostly above the line and rarely below the line.
Okay. Great, Sri. So now we've defined what are the different types of e-commerce models. Now we have to actually talk about the media component that can address each and every one of those.
Yep.
That's really what is sucking up all the oxygen in this space. So, first question I have for you is who should pay for retail media? That is the age-old question.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring the conversation back somewhat to D2C, but also try to answer it in the big picture context over here. Who should pay for retail media? So first, what is retail media? It's executing media on a retail transactable platform of some sort, which means by definition, something is getting sold on the platform. It's not just inspiration.
Would you include marketplaces in that, like
100%,
Drizzly?
yes.
So that is retail
100%,
media.
because something's being sold at the end of the funnel over there.
It's-
People can buy a
it's-
product.
It's where they're buying the product.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely. So in that model of retail media, there's no way I can tell you 100% of the time marketing should pay for it. I use a simple model. I break it up into two pieces.
Okay.
Piece one, if it's driving inspiration, brand equity, awareness, or it's an innovation launch because the brand doesn't exist and you're trying to drive awareness for it, it's a marketing element below the line.
Below the line.
If it's an existing brand and it's purely a price promo vehicle and it's built around a holiday, a seasonal event, like if you think back to our PepsiCo days,
Yeah.
Super Bowl,
Yeah. Sure.
Memorial Day,
Right.
2 for $5. That's driving a lower funnel activity.
Okay.
It's not really driving awareness for Doritos as an example, above the line.
Okay.
Straightforward, right in the middle.
All right. So now we've addressed the issue of where does the budget come from? Now, what do I do with that budget? What are the different things I can do from a media perspective to move the needle?
Yeah. So let's break that up into 3 or 4 pieces and just discuss them real
Great,
quick.
great.
What are the types of advertising?
All right.
That's what this comes down to. The number one is SEM.
Yep.
In
Search engine marketing.
an earlier IGTV episode, we've discussed this in a little bit more detail, but
Yep.
search engine marketing retail on site. This is the world of I'm running search within the Walmart.com ecosystem. That is clearly an activity which is driving awareness to find a product.
Yes.
Below the line.
Okay.
No debate. But then here's a little trick that pops up. Let's take Walgreens. Walgreens does not run its search through a media agency.
How do they do their search?
They actually have merchandisers, works with sales teams.
Interesting.
Automatically above the line. WMG, below the line agency. AMG, below the line agency.
So let's talk about that. Does that mean that when they work with it, does that mean it's based upon who the billing authority is? Like when I pay for my advertising on WMG, do I write a check to Walmart or do I write a check to the agency?
You write a check to the agency.
So that's a real kicker. And that's always been my experience. From my day-to-days, as long as it was an agency and not the retailer, that's when companies like alcohol could actually buy media or data. But the minute the invoice came from the retailer, all bets were off. Couldn't do it.
It's the same story here.
Yeah.
Invoice comes from the retailer.
Yeah.
It's going into a merchandiser's P&L. It's
okay.
Fair game trade. Let's jump to all the Google search.
Google. We haven't talked about them much yet.
Yes.
We really need, because they're big.
Let's come back and actually do an episode on Google SEM sometime in the later.
I think that's a good idea. We're going to hold us accountable to that. We're going to give you an entire episode on Google because we talk a lot about Amazon, but let's face it, where does search start?
Absolutely. There are so many tactics on Google. People think of Google just as search. Google has display ads, it has retargeting, it has lookalike ads. That list is
okay. We're going to come back to Google.
But for the purpose of today, we're talking SEM.
Yep.
Search. 100% marketing because it's to find the product.
Yeah.
And that situation of finding the product could be on a need state, could be in a solution state the consumer is looking for, or could be an exact brand with a keyword that they're looking for, could be a hashtag, could be a disease, could be anything.
And this is below the line.
This is 100% below the line.
Yep.
The next one is the Google ad tactics,
Ooh,
which are several, but I'm going to use 2 or 3 examples over here.
Display ad?
Display ad shows you the product with a price.
Yes.
Above the line.
Right.
Retargeting. Classic marketing that follows you from platform to platform. Marketing below the line.
You looked at it here. It's going to expose you to it there. You always wonder why. It's not by accident, folks.
Lookalike.
Yeah. Now, what's lookalike?
Lookalike is when it's a simple advertising terminology for when consumers search for something, and certain things pop up in SEM.
Yeah.
You could easily get a search strategy that says, I want mine to look alike the search that they're looking for, even though the product isn't the same. Conquest kind of comes into that umbrella.
Yeah.
Below the line.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
There's no product price.
So that's 3 we've done.
Yes. Let's jump to social media ads. Facebook ads. 100% marketing.
Yeah.
It's about awareness. Because you rarely, unless it's a DTC native brand, find a shop now button from social media.
What if you are co-branding with a retailer, like I pay retailer X to feature my product on their Instagram feed?
So rarely does that happen, first of all.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it'll typically be tied to a promotional activity.
Yeah, that's usually it.
And so I think the moment I use the word promotional activity, I answered the question.
Yeah, it's above the line. Okay.
All right, let's go to some big things next.
Okay,
so let's go to hit up.
I want to talk about the old world. You know, remember the good old days when we only had 3 television networks and everything was. So let's talk about.
Peter, I was raised in India when television first came in the late 70s.
Yeah.
We had programming from 7:20 p.m. to 9:20 p.m. And most of that was 2 30-minute segments, which was the news. One in English, one in the native language of the state you lived in. And we had 1 hour of programming, 1 channel.
Better than some rerun sitcom from the 70s.
Fair. You know what, Peter? Fair.
I think.
Although my first series that I watched intently was Saved by the Bell.
I would say that the impact on culture was driven in my world by Three's Company, but that's another story. That's another story. All right, so let's talk about allocating. I know we did. We are date stamped accordingly. Let's talk about television, print, radio, and other kind of traditional media.
So traditional media is media below the line.
Yeah.
So what I want to get the mindset
like an FSI.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to get the mindset of digital people, I would love for y'all to think about it. It's very fair in your digital P&L to get a national allocation or an allocation to your e-commerce P&L for national media. Because every time a TV ad runs, you're also getting a halo impact for your e-commerce.
Walk us through that for just a second. Let's
Absolutely.
double click on that.
Absolutely. So let's take a real life example.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of watching a Giants game. I know both of you are Giants fans, so
Yeah.
this made it easy.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk about the Yankees and Dodgers. So we're in the middle of a Giants game. It's third down, it's timeout,
Yeah.
an ad pops up.
Boom.
Ad could be for anything, it's for a bottle of water.
Yeah.
And we notice something, we immediately whip out the Amazon app.
Yeah.
We search for the beverage, we end up buying the beverage. It's the ad that influenced the sale. It wasn't a digital ad, it wasn't search, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
It was the TV ad. So it's only fair to let your offline advertising ecosystem
Yes.
put a tax on the e-commerce P&L as well. And
Oh,
often
interesting.
I find,
So this is where they take money
correct,
from your budget as opposed to giving money to your budget.
which is fair,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
very fair because you're getting the halo impact. So be open to the idea.
And
Below
how,
the
do they
line,
and how do they measure that?
so right now it's through attribution.
Yeah.
So, and there's a certain percent allocation. Like when I worked my J&J days,
Yep.
I had to literally sit with Pricewaterhouse, the CFO, to get the allocation model.
Ah.
But we created one,
Yeah.
and it's fair.
And as we have interactive television, then the
Yes.
attribution becomes much more
Much more
direct.
easier.
You don't have to project. You can actually calculate it. It's counting rather
Yeah.
than projecting.
Much more
Good.
easier.
All right. That's good to know. Now, that's national advertising. Now let's get to what a lot of what our audience will know very well, and you and I know very well, which is this shopper marketing group.
Shopper marketing.
They often are known as the group that takes a national strategy and let's say they try to take that square peg and push it into the round hole of the retail channel.
They activate it on retail.
That's activation.
So,
yeah.
so let's throw a real life example at us, and then we'll try
Let's
to
think.
play the e-commerce.
Let's think about. Well, you already talked about Super Bowl, so let's talk about. They introduce a new movie. It's the next Star Wars edition, and PepsiCo has bought the rights to that, and they are going to activate that at probably their 10 or 20 largest retailers.
By the way, no prizes for guessing who are two people on earth that are PepsiCo fans for life.
There we go.
So the example Peter just gave, classic shopper marketing, activating, and the way the activation would traditionally happen is you'd see cutouts inside the store.
Point of purchase, or
a
POP,
point of
as
purchase,
the industry calls that.
POP, and that could translate to an end cap, could
Yep.
be anywhere in the store, depending on the outcome that you want.
Yeah,
So I think of these as e-commerce banner placements
Yeah.
on a retail website.
exactly.
They're driving partial equity.
And what about like on the page featuring the product
Absolutely.
in search rather than it's not driven so much by the they put it at the top of the category page, it's
Sure.
featured, or it could be tied to the search terms.
100% of the time, that is below the line because it's trying to drive awareness via a campaign.
Okay, great.
Straightforward.
Okay,
Can we repeat that one more time?
yeah, sure.
Shopper marketing activities, folks, they sit in sales teams in the brick and mortar world.
Right.
It's trade.
It is, but
I'm
not
literally saying
in the digital world. It's
Below the line.
It's a different story. It is
Yes.
below the line. Okay, I think we've covered that because of the search characteristics
bingo.
associated
Peter
with it.
nailed it.
All right. Now, it's great when they can find my product page, but then my product page, well, I got to put stuff on it, and that stuff is what we call content. It's the visual images, it's the product description, it's the ratings and reviews. It's basically every component of information, the specs, the nutritional value, the adherence to particular health lifestyles like gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian. That, to a degree, is all content. Who pays for it?
Very straightforward, Peter.
Yeah.
I think of content as packaging of the future.
Right. It's
Who pays for packaging today?
marketing. Yeah, I think that's straight up. And I think that's a perfect analogy.
Doesn't
The
happen
packaging-
today, though.
No.
Guess who's paying for most
It's
of
probably
the Trade.
The trade is paying for
content?
it.
What happens when you use trade to pay for content? You can't drive value for the consumer via price points.
Yeah, because the other thing we should talk about and why it's probably moved in that direction is that more often than not, retailers have unique idiosyncrasies about their digital page that require, modifications and what have you. And as a result of that, it makes it very easy to try and force the funding onto the trade line. And that's just the wrong way to look at it. In fact, I think we'll have coming up shortly some people from SGSCO, including Holly Gonzalez.
I can't wait.
And she talks a lot about how while you are producing the core images that are necessary for your product page, there is so much more you can do in a digital world to generate the kind of quality visual content that will make your product pages sing.
Yeah, she's going to be on mid-October for a Women's Month, which
Yeah.
is running concurrently with the Profit Series.
Sure.
President of SGSCO. I can't
Yeah.
wait to have her on to
Yeah,
chat.
she's a great
Yeah,
guest.
Absolutely.
All right, we talked about who should pay for it, but who should control the development of that content?
Straightforward. Today, 100% of the time, it is actually being done by marketing. Sales teams are respecting the boundary. They're demanding. They're bulldozing.
Yeah.
They're asking.
You
They're
got
aggressive.
to give me the blueprint.
But somehow a boundary has fallen into place in the accurate way, which is marketing, and the brands are owning it. So this one, good news. I feel it is where it belongs. Let's not flip the script and move it out of marketing, because who knows the brand the best?
Yeah. Well, that's the product page. What about the remaining components of retail media?
Aha. What a great question. So let's talk about a banner ad.
Yeah.
And so a banner ad is classically telling a story about the brand, or within a category, outside of a category. Let's take an event.
Yeah.
An event could be a simple 2 for 5.
Yeah.
Could be a 3 for 10, whatever the case might be.
Let's say it's like the
promotional-
Walgreens Red Nose Day.
Walgreens Red Nose Day event.
That's an
at
event.
the retailer with
Yep.
a price promotional activity.
Yep.
Trade above the line.
Trade above the line.
Sales team should be very comfortable doing it. Minimum brand checks required to make sure you don't erode brand equity, but that's sales.
So in terms of developing the content, the sales team should have access to a resource
Library.
that can either pull from, or someone that can be at their disposal to make the necessary modifications fit that retailer.
Shopper marketing.
But that should come out of the trade.
Sales team.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt.
How about now that we've done all this, we gotta measure it, right? Talk to me about the marketing mix model.
Yes, marketing mix model. So, biggest piece of advice that this is coming through my own humble learnings of actually fighting this up front, and then adapting, learning, collaborating, and learning what's the right way to do this for the industry. If you want to be successful in executing retail media, banner ads,
Yep.
search, conquesting, Google search, on-site search,
Yeah.
you must work with the brand teams, your CMO, the agency of record, and make sure it is done in a planned and purposeful way
Yep.
through the mix model
Yeah.
that feeds the strat plan, which results in the AOP.
Okay.
It is wrong, 100% wrong.
AOP is
annual operating plan.
Annual. We always want to make sure we're
The mathematical model
Yeah.
that sets the vision
Yeah.
for how next year is going to financially land.
Yeah.
Strat plan, of course, precedes it.
Yeah.
What are we focused on? Our priorities for the year that results in the financial model.
What about LRPs?
I'm going to let you take that one.
No, long range planning is always something that you need to take into place. I think we got so familiar with doing AOPs, but we always have to remember investing in the long range.
I
And
call
that's
that
where-
the strat plan.
And that's where content really is king.
Yep.
You need to know what you're going to need, when you're going to need it, and you need to think about investing for capabilities of the future.
Absolutely. So to me, that's what you put in the strat plan.
Yeah.
As it's one of the pillars of growth go forward, without
Sure.
which the four-legged stool goes down to a 3 and often stumbles.
Well, Sri, I think we've really covered quite the array of facets within media and e-commerce. I think this has been very helpful, and hopefully our audience thinks so as well. So we're going to close out
absolutely.
episode 3.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, and look forward to connecting with you in episode 4 of our profitability series for e-commerce. Thanks.
Thank you.